Welcome to the Sherborn Board of Selectmen meeting Thursday, August 8th, 2013. We're going to start with our Town Administrator, David Williams, reading us the agenda.
All right, the first thing will be to vote to approve or amend the agenda, and then at 6:05 we'd have public comment, and then consideration of appointments of our new fire chief, new member to Revenue Development Committee, and appointing an alternate member to the Zoning Board of Appeals. At 6:20, we have the CM&D Director, Ed Wagner, in to talk about the road improvement plan and the use of Chapter 90 funds. And then at 6:40, I can give Town Administrator report of a couple of topics. And Selectmen can make a proclamation of the 100th birthday of Bess Rowell. And then at 6:50, we have scheduled Barbara St. Andre of Petrini and Associates to come in and talk about the Town Council retainer. And at 7 o'clock, an executive session involving litigation of Sweet Meadow Farm and the cell tower.
And we won't be returning to open session after that?
Will not.
Right, okay. Does anybody have any amendments to this agenda?
Could I ask that he explain the, well, maybe that's going to happen anyway under public comment, explain the new listening system?
Sure.
Because we just had somebody take advantage of it.
Right, we'll do that in public comment if we could.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Right? Any amendments, Mike? You're good
No,
with this
my
agenda?
understanding is David is going to talk a little bit about the report we had last week with respect to Maple Street project during his administrative report.
During his report?
in terms
Yeah,
of public
we
comment.
can bring it up, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so otherwise I'll take a motion to approve the agenda as written and read.
Second?
All in favor? Great. All right, that puts us into public comment. Are there any comments? We would welcome Mary Wolf, new chair of advisory. She's here to press the flesh a little bit. So Mary, if you have any comments to make while you're here, great.
Not really, just bringing your budgets on target, and I'll be a happy woman.
All right, great. Well, and congrats for stepping up to be chair on advisory. And you have two new members, is
I
that
do.
correct?
Mark Kantorsky and Anthony Barsenian,
Great,
and we're excited to have them and looking forward to a good year.
excellent. You have a good crew.
Who went off?
Mark Brandon and Eric Siri.
They did yeoman service for the town. Thank you.
They sure did.
Both Eric and Mark, if they happen to be listening.
But you got great folks to
Yes,
fill those shoes.
absolutely. The whole committee we're looking forward to a good year.
Excellent, excellent. So no other public comment? I think we'll talk, David, you wanted to address what the new
Sure.
condition? Yes, oh, there we are, right here.
I have a public comment. My name is Joan Rothney. I live at 2D Village Way in Woodhaven, and I was looking forward to tonight with great expectations because this would be the first night that you would have the assisted listening devices. And as it turns out, there are actually two types. I see that Elliot is wearing one right now with the in the ear. He's put it in the ear, and I think it's working exceedingly well. My hearing aid, it requires I have a telecoil, and David explained to me that there are two more devices that are on order, will be here shortly, so that I'm relying on my hearing aid right now, but when I made my public comment, and I'll sit over there with this, and this will work perfectly well. But I guess my comment is to really commend the board for their willingness to go forward with this, for addressing the needs of those residents in town who are hearing impaired, and really making a very clear statement. This is such a wonderful beginning. So that's my public comment. I'm thrilled, I'm pleased, and I hope that we'll go forward because there are other facilities in the town of Sherborn that are not compliant with the ADA regulations for hearing impairment, which became law in 2011. So that's all I have to say. I'm going to sit back and enjoy my new device.
Great, and thank you for helping spur us along here to get this done, and David made it but first, Paul, go for it.
Well, first, I want to thank the Disability Committee and you for this initiative. You brought it forward. You came to a selectmen's meeting some time ago, presented the idea. I want to commend David for following through on it. I did get an email from Thursday Campbell who wanted me to remind people that it works only if you use the microphones. That the stray discussions in the back of the room don't work. So we need to have some means when someone is wanting to comment from the back to actually come up to
the microphone.
Here in some way, because that picks it up.
Ideally, you would want anybody making a comment to the
come up here.
public to be on a microphone. And the best way to do that instead of a moving microphone is to
Bring
have
people
them
up
come
here.
up here to do their comment.
Okay. So we should be more disciplined about that.
Well, I mean, it's not just for in this room, but the people viewing at home don't pick up the comments.
Right.
So maybe when that does happen and it's unavoidable, maybe the board can repeat what they just said.
Good idea.
Yeah.
Could you
So-
briefly describe what we've got going here now?
Right. So this is the sign that's located outside of our conference room. And as Joan said, there are two other units coming in that specifically work with hearing aids. And I haven't used those, but I think Joan could come into the room and pick up one of those devices and just put it around her neck and then click something on her hearing aid, and then it will pick up the signal. So she doesn't have to take the hearing aid out and put in this type of device.
Great.
So those should have been delivered with the rest of the stuff, but it wasn't. But it'll be
It's on
here as
its
soon as
way.
possible. Yeah, and those are a little more higher tech issue than what these are.
Got it.
But I did use the amplifier, and I went walking around the whole top floor here. It's got good range on it, and it sounded nice and clear. And maybe we can test one out after the meeting.
Great.
David, there are a lot of boards in town that don't sit in front of microphones when they meet. Is this going to change that practice? Do we have a way to get these devices, if people want them, in front of other boards?
Right now, we would have to be breaking out the whole sound system. So the other boards would have to be using the sound system, which is,
In this room.
Right. So we may want to think about that in terms of boards that have permitting hearings and other types of hearings, where
Right.
there may be members of the audience who are concerned, or at least ask people if they're concerned.
Right. Yeah, it would be good to expand that. It's just, we have two operators, and scheduling them is, the constraint, I think, right now.
That's the operation of the microphones?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Let me just say that this board and prior boards have been committed to being inclusive, allowing people to participate. All our citizens are entitled to participate. The Americans with Disability Act is intended by federal law to make sure that all citizens of the United States have equal opportunity to participate in their government and in ordinary life events. We have a lot that we've done. There's a lot that we still have to do. But this is one of those steps that allows us to be more open and to have more participation on the part of all our citizens. So it's a welcome move and accomplishes compliance with federal law, and it's a good thing for our citizens.
Great. Elliot, yes, sir.
My comment is, I've had this device on for 10 minutes now, and it's great. So,
You're a happy man.
uh,
That's great to see.
my doctor told me I did not need a hearing aid. I said, what?
Perfect. Well, David, in your research for this solution, did you see other solutions for non-mic'd rooms? Or that's certainly
Well,
something
it
to
has to
look
go
for?
through an amplification, so
You
it has to
gotta-
go through a microphone into that amplification system. So I think it's an operator and access issue,
Yeah.
for us, and
Got
if
it.
we can figure out a way that,
Makes this room
somebody
more
else,
available
yeah, can
more
set it
often.
up and
Yep.
and have it
All right.
available.
That's
We'll
great.
look at it. I'll talk to Pat Casello and see what obstacles
Yeah,
there would be.
maybe something to do is to get people trained. Maybe there's some interested high school students who would be trained so that they could do that once in a while.
That'd be great.
We should definitely, any public hearing would be nice if we were rolling out the system. I don't know if that's done now.
Right.
Needs to get put on the agenda for cable.
Good. That's part of it.
Yeah, part of it is just get it on, the list to be taped.
Well, does it need to be taped in order for the hearing system to work?
No.
Doesn't need to be taped, but you need to have an authorized, person.
Equipment
running it,
operator.
Equipment
Yeah.
operator. But
We-
you're talking about a TV station, so.
So it's a
The person
scheduling,
has
and then
to-
it's the cable
and
group's
it's the person.
staffing.
It's not actually,
Which
that's actually the cable system. So we'd have to work with them on access to that equipment.
Yep.
The only equipment that we own are the listening devices.
Uh,
Got it. All right.
So we'd have nothing to listen to if they didn't cooperate with us, is that it?
Yeah, it's teamwork.
There you go.
That's great. A lot of hot air anyway. Okay, well, we'll move along then to the appointments, although I think we might skip the fire chief. No, I don't think we'll do that. So what are we gonna do here, David? Do you have something specific we need to
No, I
say
think
or do here in regards to what we're doing?
originally when you took a vote to appoint Tim Morrissey as the
Whom we
fire chief.
welcome with open arms here this evening. He started this week, just so folks know. He started, and he's been
Yeah, why don't you
getting up to
stand up?
speed, so, yeah, why don't you come over to the microphone, Tim? We're not gonna put you on the spot, but it comes with the job, all right?
So it's really just an introduction since you've already
Yes,
done that.
okay. So you're already appointed, you're the man. Welcome to Sherborn.
Thank you. I've had a very busy week since I got here Monday morning, so I've met with a number of people. Been working with the town manager on a number of meetings this week. A number of people have called the office just to call and say hi. Thank you for taking the position.
Sure.
We're glad to have you. As I was mentioning to the Selectman Giacomo, that people were shaking my arm off a couple of afternoons this week. Very pleased that now we have full-time access to the fire and rescue department Monday through Friday,
Yeah.
not just a few hours in the morning.
Right.
It's going to make it a lot easier on our inspections. It's going to make it easier on our ambulance crews that I'll be available to help pull time. Plus, we'll be able to work on our training and other fire department programs, inspections, and get those completed.
That's great.
So we look forward to, the department looks forward to a good fall, September really taking off with our feet running.
Yeah.
Welcome to Sherborn.
Yeah.
Thank you
It's
very much.
exciting. That's
Thank you very
great.
much. I am very pleased to be here.
I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
So glad. That's great. All right,
Yep, thank you.
thank you.
Thanks.
Doesn't the statute say 1 or 3 years?
Actually, the paperwork I had, it said indefinite, but I can go check that.
Do you have the,
I don't have the statute,
just take a look at that to make sure we can do that?
right?
My recollection was 1 to 3 years. 1 or 3 years.
Okay, so that's something that's important to
Or, okay.
figure that out. Great,
And-
good catch.
And I don't think we specified that before, when we took the vote before on approving the candidate.
All right. Next up, Revenue Development Committee, we have a new member, is that correct, David?
Yeah, the committee brought forward the name of Heather Willis with a term to expire June 15th, 2014, so it'd be a one-year term. And that's filling a vacant seat, I believe.
Yes, the gentleman rolled off. So I'll take a motion for that.
I move to appoint Heather Willis to the Revenue Development Committee for a term to expire June 15, 2014.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second, but I also wanted to make
In
a
discussion?
comment or have
Yeah.
a question.
Yeah.
Which is the charge of this committee and whether we want to consider that charge of this committee before too long?
You have the charge of the committee. Could you briefly describe that, because you read that? to me
Yeah, I
earlier?
didn't bring it up with me, but
Yep.
basically it was to identify revenue solutions, and bring those forward to the Board of Selectmen for approval on projects that would move forward, to be looked at or explored further. So,
That's an important distinction. The question has come up whether the committee has authority to actually cause events to happen or whether they're just an advisory committee. And my recollection was that this was just an advisory
Right.
committee to the board,
Right.
rather than a committee who was set up to actually go out and bring in the revenue.
and I think that's consistent with the charge
The
that I read.
charge, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I was taken aback, I think, the last meeting where we had a report of some
Introductions made. and so
solicitation
forth.
in the
Yeah.
name of the town of, certain development or property sales, and it's not necessarily a bad idea to think about things like that, but I do think that before a committee of the town is representing the town, they ought to be authorized to represent the
Right.
town. It's one thing if individuals want to do things in their private capacities, but if you come in and say the town's behind this, you ought to have
Right.
some way of,
Right.
actually documenting that the
Authority
town
of
was
that,
behind
yeah.
it, some authority.
Many people believe that that was a hearing on that project, and that's the calls that we received this week. And nothing has even been submitted to the planning board. So I don't know if we actually said that night, that was a tentative project or,
Right, and it's a little unclear to me what representations might have been made. All I understood was there was an introduction made of a buyer with a seller
right.
by folks on that committee, but to the extent they're representing the town, we didn't weigh in on that, so.
Right. Yeah, I think we need to make it clear. In a couple of weeks, I'm doing a presentation on appointments and some reorganization of committees. And maybe we should talk about it then on either re-upping or making that charge clearer, or if there's a need for some other
Well,
sort of financial.
what you read on that charge was pretty clear when I was in your office
Mhm.
today. So, but still, maybe there's some greater clarity in terms of what you do with a charge and move
Right.
forward.
I think, I would add this, that many times in small towns, there are a cadre of people who regularly serve the town in different positions. And then there are newcomers who come in, and the newcomers who come in often have not had access to the history of
Right.
different things and the way things are done and so on. And if you don't have that experience, when you are looking at a charge, it may not be clear to you, if you're a new volunteer, what exactly the scope of your authority is.
Right, right.
So this isn't meant to fault anybody. We welcome new volunteers. It's just sometimes maybe we need a little bit of a sheet that we pass out to volunteers
Yeah,
that makes it plain
yeah,
that there are some committees like the Board of Appeals that makes decisions that are binding on the town.
right.
There are other decisions that are just advisory to the Board of Selectmen. And so they don't make decisions binding on the town. They, if they have an idea, should come to us before they go and implement the decision
Mhm.
in order for us to determine if that's where we want to go.
Sure.
So if we had, what I've seen in other towns, there are these
It's
sheet
an
that you
orientation
give- yeah.
package of some sort.
that you give to new
Brief.
volunteers that kind
Yeah.
of, lay out the fundamentals.
Yeah, I think that's great. It also further reinforces the need for us to meet periodically with these committees to see what they're doing as well as offer some guidance. I think in the case of this particular committee, it was an evolution of what it was they were all about, all happening when we didn't have a town administrator as a sort of go-between committees and Board of Selectmen outside of meetings.
Yeah.
Now we do, so I think hopefully there'll be less confusion about roles and so forth.
Right. I hope to get all the committees on paper after they're full to at least commit to the first meeting being a reorganization meeting where they discuss what seats and who's going to have those seats.
Yep.
And also to go on the record of what their goals are for the coming year. And then we can bring the goals back to you to decide, are those really the goals that as an advisory committee you want them working on, and then send them on their way, but bring them in, maybe not quarterly, but at least once or twice a year.
Yeah. Excellent, excellent. So now we have something interesting next on the appointment
We do have to
schedule.
vote that appointment, don't we?
Oh, we did, I'm sorry, yes. So all in
Right.
favor for Heather Willis? Good catch. I'm
Yeah,
glad
you
you're
know,
up here.
Little things like votes.
Yeah. Okay, so then, what's up next? I don't quite know what's going on here.
This is zoning board of appeals, and it's consideration of appointing an alternate member to the zoning board of
Okay.
appeals. So I think there's one alternate already and 3 full seats.
Yep,
So it would be appointing another alternate. And I'm not sure why the name's not on the agenda.
well, we have a name that
We
you're
have
aware
a
of?
name,
Okay.
yeah, I believe.
That's wonderful. We've been operating with a 3 and 1 for a long time, and kind of always wanted to fill that extra spot that's been vacant for,
I wish I knew that. I would have brought names forward earlier. It's been a little difficult to have a 4-person board when, particularly when someone is, absent for health or vacation reasons and something comes up that one of the other members is conflicted on. We actually can't hear that
Yes.
matter until the sick or absent person comes in for another meeting. So it will be much more flexible with a 5th person. It'll expedite things.
I try to recruit people, but when they heard how much work that you all do, and that you get sued from time to time, that was
It's a
pretty
thankless
scary
job for
thing.
sure, isn't it?
It doesn't get any better coming onto this board. so.
No, it doesn't.
So
So what, just so I'm clear, we've got the 3 voting members and we have 2 alternates is what we're going to have. We're gonna
That's right.
add
Right.
an alternate, is that
That's right.
correct?
Right.
Okay,
become full
and then
strength.
we'll see what happens.
If
in the
someone were to
future.
resign after that who was a member, then one of the alternates could potentially
bump up.
step up.
I see,
Right.
understood. Oh,
How many
great.
names have you got?
We're about to find out, I think.
We advertised, when we advertised all the other positions, we didn't have anyone submitting names for zoning board of appeals until a name came forth in the last couple of weeks. And that person was sent the information and to send it back to us. And I don't think that is in your,
No, I don't know, so it's a mystery to me. Do we have a name that we can take action on?
I don't have the name.
Oh, you don't have the name?
You don't have the name.
Do you have know who the name is?
I'm not sure who it
Okay.
is. Is the person you and I have discussed before, or there's other people too? I haven't seen the
No,
paperwork.
it's the name, the person that you and I had, yeah,
Well, part of
Oh,
our
had
procedure has
come
been that
forward.
when a name comes forward, we do, as a matter of courtesy, often send it to the board or committee. And I think it makes sense in the case of the Board of Appeals, because that's a committee that needs to work pretty
Yes.
closely.
Yep,
Their votes have to be unanimous most of the time
all right.
All the time.
All the time.
for
Yeah,
the permitting
three-person
issues.
board, yeah.
So, before you present it here,
Send it out to you.
first I'd like to know who it is so I can think about it.
Right, right.
But number 2, I think it should be sent to the Board of Appeals to see if they have any opinions on it.
Okay.
So at least we can get feedback.
Are we time sensitive on what we're trying to do, or
I would think September 1 would be a pretty time-sensitive date.
So we could do it.
I think
for us to have
I
somebody
I would think if we
appointed
could
there?
appoint somebody the last week of August, that would
Okay.
probably be very helpful.
Okay. Elliot, yes, sir.
Yeah, so whatever committee,
Zoning board.
they will submit a name or names to you, and then you will do the appointing. Is that correct?
We are the appointing authority.
Yeah, but you'll take their advice, their
Well,
recommendations.
what Paul had described, which makes great sense, someone may come forward to us, say, I would like to be on the zoning board in this situation as an alternate. And what Paul is saying is the right thing to do is to send it to the zoning board, the interested person, so that they can provide us some feedback. Now, whether they vote on that person and present us that vote or not, I think that's a bit,
I think it's more
there's
after the
flexibility.
individual feedback to David.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we can take action with that kind of knowledge, rather than appointing somebody that the committee may not even,
This has happened
know about,
before
yeah.
in conservation.
Yeah, it makes good
And others. But it's
tenant feelings.
it's not automatic that because a board suggests this, a person is okay, that we would agree.
That's right.
Right.
We have to look at sort of the bigger picture. Is the committee evenly balanced with
Right.
different skills that complement each other, and so on and so on?
That's a very important task for this table here, to appoint someone to any committee, and I think we've taken it pretty seriously.
So as soon as we get the paperwork that we get back from all our candidates, applicants, I will distribute that out.
Okay, so you're expecting some paperwork back?
Yeah, we contacted the one name that we had
Okay,
Okay.
and requested that this paperwork come back, but I don't have the
Okay.
paperwork.
all right, so I'm glad we had this on the agenda anyway, so we had this brief discussion.
The good thing is if there turns out to be more than one candidate, there will probably be another associate slot opening soon.
Understood.
Okay.
And so there'd be another appointment.
Okay.
Right. Good to know.
So for now, there's general support for going ahead with appointing another.
Absolutely.
We've been looking for years. Please,
Okay.
yes.
Absolutely.
And then,
Find somebody, let's do it.
Absolutely.
So we'll have that.
Enthusiastic to support, I would say, David.
Yes.
Yes.
So we'll,
Please, please, please.
we'll review those names and the meeting on the 26th.
Okay,
And
and
appoint that
you'll
night.
have communicated with the folks on the zoning boards to get their input.
As soon as we get the paperwork, we'll send it out to
Great,
the board. Yeah.
terrific. Okay, so next we're on to Ed Wagner, Chapter 90 funds. And see where Ed's hoping to spend some of the Chapter 90 monies that are available. And
That's yours on mine.
so this is a memo, okay.
Great, thank you.
We currently have $436,825 in our unexpended balance of Chapter 90 funds. We also have in the area of $150,000 that has not been funded by the state yet. They've only released a small portion.
So just before you go too further, and I'm sorry, I'll interrupt you a little bit. So I'd seen a number, 250-something thousand is what we have from the state, and what I think you're saying is we expect to see 400,000 ultimately
No.
for this
year was
fiscal
like
year. No?
365.
This is what we've got left over. He hasn't
From-
spent money from prior years.
Prior years, and I'm gonna ask you that if you can just roughly break down what's been unspent. Of this 436, that's 3 or 4 years' worth of unspent monies, is that right?
No, it's a continuous rollover. In past years, if I do it like, say, South Main Street, I'll do an estimate for, say, 150,000. And that's what the request will go into Chapter 90. If at the end of the day I only spend 100,000, then that remaining 50,000 rolls over to the next year.
Okay. It
Um,
becomes part of the next year's funds available as opposed to
It's a bank.
the balance of
It's
it.
basically a bank account. Each year, the state puts in approximately 250,000. This year, through some work Paul had done at the state level, we ended up with a lot more. It's in the neighborhood of 365,000 this year.
That's for 14 or,
That was for this year, 13,
okay.
For 13, fiscal 13.
still 13.
Okay,
The problem with, the
So
state only released approximately 250,000 to us, so we still have another 150 or so coming.
well, it's 250 and it's 360 something, so it's more like 110,
110.
115 coming?
Yep.
Okay, I just, so I have it straight.
Yeah,
And it's for fiscal 13, and we're not talking fiscal 14 numbers that we anticipate. We would not see that till next year's discussion.
These are borrowed funds, so they're not yearly funds.
Okay,
I mean, they are yearly funds, but they're not tied to the budget, so they're not
right.
fiscal year funds, they're borrowed funds. And the legislature's appropriated 300 million statewide. The governor first released 150,000, then a second letter for another
50 million.
50 million, I meant.
Yeah, yeah.
150 million. Second letter, after we pressured him, he released another 50 million. And we're working on the last 100 million, which hopefully is going to come either later this fall or is going to come very early next year so that we can do spring construction work.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Great.
Absolutely.
And that's the balance of the 360 something.
Yep. This year, I would like to spend 30,000 for crack sealing. Normally, each year, we spend approximately 30,000 going through various roadways in town. This year, I've been looking at Farm, Washington, Mill, Lake, Elliott, and Everett for crack sealing.
Okay.
For sidewalks, we have 24,000 that we ran out of time last year, and I couldn't get the contractor to commit, so this year, I'd like to take the money that I did not spend last year and add another 26 to it and do a total of $50,000 worth of sidewalk work up on Oldfield.
All right.
Can I ask a question about that, Ed? I mean, Oldfield's a very nice road. It's not the busiest road in town, and, I wonder if sidewalk money could be better spent someplace where maybe a sidewalk could be extended in a area that's a difficult pedestrian area, or, somehow used. I don't know if there's a particular reason you focused on Oldfield for this. Maybe it's in bad shape, but
Maybe I could help Ed out here a bit. Over the years, the board has had that discussion numerous times. And
it's a pretty obvious discussion.
What we've discovered is that the sidewalks that we have are not maintained and are falling apart. And many people have said to us when we talked about doing new sidewalks, why would we build new sidewalks when you don't take care of your old sidewalks? So the board, in its infinite wisdom, decided to set aside $25,000 a year, which was roughly 10% of our revenue, the Chapter 90 funds, and use that fund to maintain what we had. So that's sort of like a town earmark from the board. This was voted maybe 5 years ago or so. We haven't always spent the money for different reasons. Sometimes the projects that need to be done cost more than the set aside for that year. He has talked about this particular sidewalk several times in the past because there were some gaps and some work that needed to be done. So in order to maintain what we have, we need to spend this kind of money on a regular basis. That's the history here.
I mean, it's, in some towns, they would do a betterment assessment for somebody who had a sidewalk in front of their house, and they would repair it that way, Paul. I mean, that's fine that past boards have come up with that. Maybe that's the right thing to do. I'm just questioning this particular expenditure, given where Oldfield is and the level of traffic on Oldfield and the nature of the sidewalk on Oldfield.
Well, I think what you're talking about, and I appreciate the history on this, Paul, but you're gonna have to help me out, David, because I had asked yesterday, knowing that we're gonna be asked to approve something like this today, what I was looking for is an overall priority list that helps us tick off why we're picking this particular these roads for crack sealing, why we're picking the sidewalk like this, why we're gonna go Forest Street for this section versus other things, whether we have a plan or a priority list to choose from versus.
And I think the director is
piecemeal thing.
telling us that he wants to set one of those up. That looks like a good idea. That's part of this report also.
If I may.
Haven't gotten there yet, yeah.
In last year, I went through town and created a database of all of the sidewalks, their lengths, approximate widths, and their current condition on a scale of 1 to 5. At that time, I was directed by the board to address the most serious sidewalks. And at the time, I think we had a small discussion on, say, one of our worst sidewalks in town is actually Bogastow. However, the level of traffic on Bogastow and the width of the roadway there, I don't think I've ever seen anybody walk on the sidewalk. Everybody's in groups in the street at their preference. So the question begs, do you do like you said, the high priority ones like the downtown area, or do you get into the neighborhoods? We approximately received $250 some odd $1,000 from Chapter 90. There's no other budgeted funds. So in order to take care of 65 miles of roadway in town, I'm not left with a lot of room to come up with a overall game plan. I'm forced to put out the fires and take care of the worst case scenarios.
Are you saying you can't spend sidewalk money on roads, or would this?
We can, but I only have $250,000 to spread out through the whole town and take care of 65 miles of roadway.
But if you were not rebuilding the old field sidewalks for $50,000, are there road projects you could put that money to?
Absolutely.
Oldfield was identified, I believe by Ed, but maybe your predecessor, as being one of the worst conditioned sidewalks in the town.
But
So
again, the question again, Paul, is, is that a road where people walk on the sidewalk, or do they walk in the road because there's no traffic on Oldfield?
And that was the question raised by former Selectman Pucci. In the case of his roadway over on Russet Hill, you've got a sidewalk that doesn't connect anywhere. It's just kind of in the middle of nowhere. So do you spend the monies to redo that sidewalk if, again, nobody's going to use it and it doesn't connect anywhere?
Oldfield's a little like that, I think.
It does the loop, yeah, up and around. But that's
I think if we're trying to get bang for our buck out of a limited supply of money, we ought to be putting it to the areas that are going to mean the most to the most people in town. And I don't think the Oldfield Road sidewalk is that, unless there's a
Well,
great
I don't have
outcry
enough
from Oldfield
information to
Road.
know what the priorities are, so that's where I'm at.
So
you see?
what sidewalk would you spend it on?
I don't know if I'd spend it on a sidewalk at this point in time, Paul.
Well, see, that's where I would disagree with you. I think, I have, throughout the time I've been on this board, advocated more sidewalks in this town rather than less.
Well, then I'm
And
happy
they are-
to build,
they
to
are
spend it on
actually-
building sidewalks, but you just told me you
They-
didn't want to build sidewalks.
I'd love to build sidewalks.
Okay.
We've had many meetings talking about building sidewalks. But in fact, our sidewalks are shrinking because we're losing sidewalks to buckling, to washing out, to deterioration, overgrowth, all kinds of, they're getting less and less. So instead of advancing, we are losing ground. That's why we made the commitment that we would try and bring back what we had, and then based on that, go forward. Just like we're building a house, you make sure your foundation is in place. Because every time we talk about a new sidewalk, the first thing we'd hear is, hey, you build it and then you're gonna let it rot like you do everything else for all the other sidewalks.
Well, I'm
And
sure the
then-
town didn't build this sidewalk. I suspect the developer had to build this sidewalk when the subdivision went in.
Yes.
Yes. And also to further Paul's point too, is if we have a sidewalk that we've identified as being bad, the liability also falls on us to leave it there in that's conditioned for public use.
Right, because we have liability if somebody injures themselves.
The
Well, it's the
city's-
same liability we have on a road if somebody, falls in a pothole or does something else because the road is in such bad shape.
But one presumes that you're gonna have more pedestrians on sidewalks than you are gonna have in a pothole in the middle of the street.
I'm just starting from the premise, Paul, that we don't have a lot of pedestrians on the Oldfield sidewalk. I mean, I don't have any evidence of that, and maybe, we need more information to make a decision like that, but intuitively, repairing a subdivision sidewalk compared to putting money towards road projects that we're hearing Ed tell us there's a wish list of other projects. If we could get something done on one of the roads that we have thousands of people drive on every day, that'd be great.
I did meet with the, excuse me, the chair of traffic safety, is it Brad Van Brunt?
Yeah.
And this is a couple of weeks ago. He had a few pet projects that he would like, not pet projects, but a few projects that he thought were high priorities that we've been trying to chip away at. I don't remember how traffic safety felt about sidewalks and that kind of
I
thing.
don't believe
but-
they've ever weighed in. It's mostly guardrails, signage, and redesigns of intersections lately.
I know it was a guardrail on Coolidge, is that?
Coolidge,
And what was the estimate to fix that?
15,000.
And that's been in disrepair for how long?
Approximately 8 months.
Okay. So that was one of Brad's top projects that he thought should be done. But that's a safety, traffic safety issue. I'm just pointing out that there are other things.
So when you have your 5 wish list, what you're saying is and I'm jumping the gun to Forest Street, not to, because it segues off of this issue of, if you had 50 grand to spend on Maple this year, would you prefer to do 50 grand on Maple than the unused sidewalk on Oldfield? That's a core question. But are you also saying that the Forest Street repair is a higher priority than the Maple or the North Main?
Well, remember, he's only spending 217,000. He still has 219. So if you want to spend 50,000 on Maple Street and you want to do it this year, the money's there.
Yeah, I'm not,
What
I'm
I
not
was-
trying to talk the dollars necessarily. I'm
What
just
I-
trying to get a sense
What I've
of
kind of been,
what
what
you,
I've kind of looked
why.
at.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like this is piecemeal and I have trouble with it, that's all. You're making me make a decision.
I have estimates for all of these, and what I'm kind of looking at is what do we have available for funds. This year, I wanted to take care of Forest Street. We had a number of areas that CM&D, in order to save Chapter 90 funds, we went along, cut out the edges of the roadways that were failing, re-gravelled them, put in a binder course. Also on Forest Street, we're not going to do a grind, we're just going to do an overlay. We felt that that would be the best bang for the buck, and that saves $100,000. And looking forward to next year, I'd like to do Maple Street next year. And my estimates for Maple Street are going to be approximately $300,000.
Yeah,
So I'm trying to keep enough in the
and
kitty
that's a
to take care of that.
reconstruct, yeah.
We do have the room this year. If you wanted to add another roadway in, we could fit in North Main Street from Coolidge to the Natick line. There's a number of ripples out before you get to the Natick line, and what I'm told is it fails repeatedly almost every 8 years or so because the entire roadway is built on peat and a swamp.
Yeah.
And unless we're actually going to excavate out everything there and redo that hole, it just has to be addressed every so often. And I could do that project there for about 120,000. So we could fit that one
So
in
you could
this year
fit that,
too.
and that would be, so, I'm just beating a dead horse here a little bit, but I'm just making sure. So Forest Street's definitely your top priority. The funds aren't available to do what you want to do to Maple, and you're not gonna do a patch job. So then you go down to North Main and say, I could use some of the other funds to cover what I need to do for that section that is one of the top priorities of bothersome areas for you. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, back to the sidewalks. So we committed, and I appreciate Paul's certainly been a big proponent of sidewalks and sidewalk repair and all of that. We committed 24 grand last year, which means I approved doing 24 grand for some sidewalk. I don't remember what it was, but somehow we didn't do it. So could you just remind me again what it was we didn't do and why we didn't do it, and now we're using it for somewhere else?
Last year, we
Oldfield?
had a scheduling issue with the contractor and getting them in to do the Woodland and Goulding streets, and by the time they finished that, we just simply ran out of time weather-wise.
So why wouldn't you be doing those now?
We're getting on the schedule now, and I knew we were gonna be coming back before the board, and I figured I'd just bang out one project, add this year's 25 to it, and just continue
So
down.
that, in lieu of
The
doing
20
what we
the
said
25
last year?
On sidewalks, though, wasn't gonna be used on Woodland and Goulding, right? So
No,
where
it was
would that be?
earmarked for Oldfield. What I'm doing is
I
more
see.
on Oldfield. I need to do almost all of Oldfield, but.
I mean, $50,000 for basically 5 houses worth of frontage is what it looks like. Thousand.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like a good bargain for the town.
And we're not doing Woodland and Goulding,
Woodland.
which we already approved doing.
Woodland was done last year from South Main to Goulding. I'm sorry, Woodland was done from South Main to Deerfield, and Goulding West was done completely. And I held off going up into the Mill Street because we were discussing doing a redesign of the
So
intersection.
how do we have the 24 grand left over?
24 grand was approved by the board last.
It was gonna be half of that
Last
old
summer.
field.
and
Was gonna be half of Oldfield is what?
I was gonna be doing a project on Oldfield.
Oh, I
And
misunderstood you.
we ran out of time, so I just
I
didn't get to
misunderstood you.
utilize it.
Okay. I misunderstood you. Yes, sir.
I think this North Main Street at the Natick line should be smoothed off. Every time I drive there, about at least twice a day, I keep saying I get seasick. And it's outrageous, and I think sometimes someone's gonna get hurt. I'll probably get a ticket for driving over the center of the road, because that's the only
Smoother.
smoother spot that I can find,
Yep.
is straddling the center line, if there's nothing coming, of course.
Well,
And as everyone knows, it's built over a swamp, so no matter what you do, it's gonna shake, rattle, and roll, and you're just gonna have to keep, as you say, every so many years,
yeah.
smooth it and kiss it and make it better for another.
Okay, so I'm all for doing the roads. I'm more interested in sidewalks where there are more people walking on, particularly downtown and so forth. So I guess I need to know more. Maybe we have to come back to this one or something. Looks like we have more.
I can certainly forward you that sidewalk list with all the
Yeah,
different grades
that
I gave it. Again, we were just addressing the worst priorities, because again, if we do have a sidewalk that is in disrepair, we should be making repairs so that nobody hurts themselves.
I think one thing to remember is how the sidewalks got to places like Oldfield and Bogstown. It's because they had subdivisions approved by the
Exactly.
planning board, and they were required to put sidewalks there, not because it's the best place in town to have a sidewalk. So when we reinvest in a decision that was not an optimum decision for the town, we're just sort of doubling down on a bad expenditure. It was not the right expenditure. Now, if there's a liability risk, town council's in the room, maybe she can help us with a
In-
strategy for that, but.
In most cities and towns, they're famous for requiring the contractors to put in the sidewalks, but then they don't give the public works the funds to actually maintain them, knowing that every 8 to 10 years, you're gonna have to completely redo them. It is an infrastructure cost, and it's the first thing to get cut. And Paul and I went through the exercise with a number of other cities and towns earlier this year, and in order to maintain our roadways, we really should be doubling the amount of money that we're putting into it now.
Well,
I have a question. Do residents in these neighborhoods complain about the sidewalks?
Very few.
Proves Mike's point.
Well, I'm sorry.
if you have sidewalks that are a mess, people won't use them. If you maintain them, we want to encourage pedestrians. We want to encourage communities. And communities are from people walking and not from driving to Boston. I've always been committed to putting sidewalks in the town, maintaining the sidewalks that we have, and adding new sidewalks wherever we can. We always have the debate, what is the most optimal place to do something? And that becomes an excuse to do nothing, because every time we have that discussion, everybody has a different opinion about what should be first. We can never reach agreement as to what should be first. Nothing ever gets done. The amount of new sidewalks that have been added in the town in the last 10 years is zero.
Wait, there's like a 40-foot section on the bridge in front of me, the sidewalk to nowhere.
Yes, and there was a discussion about that. They didn't, should we have
Incredible.
that sidewalk there, shouldn't we have that sidewalk there? But the state was gonna pay for it, and it was gonna be free.
Yeah.
So why not take it in the hopes one day there would be a sidewalk?
Understood. Yeah.
It's a logical place to
Serves
have
as a
it.
good area for me to build up snow when we're plowing.
There you go.
It's a snow storage area.
You got a big development just down at the foot of the hill from
Right,
Whitney
there's a big development.
Bridge, so
Someday there'll be sidewalks.
maybe
Then we
we
have
need a
the
sidewalk.
rail trail, and we're
Yeah.
gonna have a
Oh, I
parking
understand.
lot
I'm
there.
just
So
teasing.
it made sense to have that. But that's so typical of Sherborn, to have a 40-foot stretch, or on Maple Street, we have a stretch of sidewalk that we started. We were gonna do all of Maple
Yeah.
Street.
Yeah.
We had a stretch at the, towards the Western Avenue end that goes for a little bit and stops, because we never went further.
But if Ed was saying I'd use 50 grand to start moving that sidewalk further, wouldn't you be more supportive of that than this situation?
No, I think we have to maintain, first legally, you have to maintain what you have. If you're gonna abandon it, then you send out a backhoe and you dig the damn thing up,
Yeah.
and you put cones on it, and you tell everybody walk on the street, which is a different hazard. But if you're gonna have sidewalks, whether they came from the planning board, doesn't matter how you got them. It's like having a kid. It doesn't matter how the kid was conceived. If you got a kid, you have a kid. You gotta pay for the kid. You just don't throw it out and say, fend for yourself, well, rot.
So the Oldfield sidewalk is our kid, Paul? Is that what we're?
It's one of the assets of the town.
Yeah,
However we
I'm
got
not
it.
buying it. I just, and literally not buying it. I don't think we should be spending $50,000 to pave and maybe rebuild 5 houses worth of sidewalk on a road that is basically used just by people in that neighborhood who already walk in the street and walk their dogs in the street and do whatever else they do.
We disagree.
I'll go to you, Elliot, then I'll go to you.
I think the handicapped people should have something to say about sidewalks. And anyone that has wheelchairs that want to take them out on a sidewalk has got to have a good, smooth sidewalk and not these stupid idiot bricks. And so you've got to maintain your asphalt sidewalks. And
But then you can't pave North Main Street.
it'll get paved.
There's enough money.
It'll get
There's
paved.
always,
And also building new sidewalks, you've got to engineer it. In the old days, we just went in with a front end loader, says, here, we want to build a sidewalk from here to there, take the front end loader, scoop out the gravel, scoop out the grass, put in gravel, and keep it gravel for 50 years maybe. We lived with those, and then paved them little bits at a time, 500 feet at a time, and you got yourself finally a sidewalk after 30 years. But you got to engineer it today, and you've got to be so wide. It's got to be this, it's got to be that.
All
So
right.
you say the hell with it.
yeah, gotcha.
There's no money left after you engineered it to pave it.
Thank you. Carol, yes, please.
Well, I happen to live on Oldfield Drive, so I know the sidewalk very well, and I know the neighborhood very well. I know there are lots of people who walk in the neighborhood, and the fact that the sidewalk was pretty terrible doesn't keep people from walking in the neighborhood, and it's very safe because there are hardly any cars, just like Mike says. So I would rather see the money go for a street where it's not so safe to walk in the street, like Maple Street. And I hope my neighbors don't hate me for saying it, but I think we need a sidewalk on Maple Street a lot more than we need a sidewalk on Oldfield Drive.
Thank you.
What are my 2 cents? If anybody wants to hear my 2 cents.
Absolutely, if you want to share them, go for
Yeah,
it.
this is speaking strictly private citizen.
Yes.
I am one of the people who walks in your neighborhood, and I've been sitting here the entire discussion. I walk there twice a week at least, and I try to, where is the sidewalk?
You don't know?
I don't know, and I walk there at least twice a week. I have no, I keep trying to say to myself, where's that sidewalk? Because I don't know, because I never use it. And I live on a street where, Cider Hill Lane, where the, was one of those, I'm sure, planning developer sidewalks was put in at the very beginning of it. I have never walked on it, I don't think, myself. I've never seen anyone walk on it. And, you know, if digging it up and planting grass there, you know, again, just my personal opinion, digging up and planting grass there allowed the town over time to put sidewalks somewhere else. I would personally be in favor of that. So,
All right, thank you. All right, so are we looking to do motions on each of these 3 items? Is that what you're asking for here? So,
Historically, the
approve it
board
or no?
is-
Do we do that?
Historically, the board has voted on them, however, they only require Mr. Williams' signature and mine.
Yeah, it's been the policy of the board because of discussions like we just had.
Yes.
To have the priorities determined by the board as to where the money ought to be spent.
He doesn't need
He
your
can go-
approval to expend the funds, but we want your backing on what he's going to spend them.
Right, so I think what we'll do is we'll vote on each of these individually, okay? And each of these 3 items, that's really what you're looking for guidance on, these 3 items. Then you'll talk briefly about the non-Chapter 90 items, correct? Okay. So as to crack ceiling for $30,000, in accordance with Ed's memo, I'll take a motion.
So moved.
All right,
Second.
second? All in favor? Great. On the sidewalks, I'll take a motion as Ed has described it, and then we'll take a vote.
On that, I would suggest we defer that because he was going to give you a list of
Right.
all the sidewalks and the comparative.
All right, yeah, that's a good solution, so we're not voting on it, because I'm not prepared to vote in favor of it with the information I have in front of me, so thank you for, that's a great solution. As to Forest Street, the $137,415 that Ed has described, I'll take a motion for that.
So move.
Yeah, I
Second?
think that needs to be done.
All in favor? Great. All right, we got through some of that there, and we had a
Did
good
you want
healthy
to
discussion.
add in the extra project of North Main?
Great idea. I would take a motion for adding the North Main Street at an approximately 120,000, correct amount yet to be determined.
So move.
And is there a second on
Is
it?
that the right amount?
I did an estimate on it. It's approximately 34,000 feet long, 26 feet wide, and it's going to be about $31,000 to grind it, $77,500 to pave it, another 11 to tack coat, police details, and what I'll probably do is add in like a 5% buffer and round it up to 140 just in case
140, okay, I've written down
other
120.
incidentals come up.
All right, I'll take a motion then for North Main in the amount of approximately 140,000, correct amount yet to be determined.
So move.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Great.
On North Main at the Natick line,
That's right.
you might get in touch with Natick, because Natick should probably 300 feet or less on the Natick side that should be paved in at the same time we do ours, because you've got that wavy pavement.
Elliot, I must say, you're more engaged in the conversation with that device.
I drive there.
No, no, I'm just saying it's a good
Twice a
thing. That's a
day,
great
and
thing.
I keep saying, one of these damn fools gonna smooth this out before
Well.
someone gets hurt, maybe me.
Well, now us damn fools are gonna do it, right, Ed?
Sir.
Thanks, Ed. Anything else you want to say, Ed, briefly here, in terms of what's in your memo?
Just to briefly touch upon, you had a request on a roadway management program,
Yes,
and that's something we have on our radar
good,
with our new GIS system that we're going to be implementing.
yep,
Primarily, it's going to be for stormwater. However, after I get all that settled, I'd like to be able to do a roadway overlay
excellent.
where I can actually go through and rate each street, but more importantly, do a final measurement on each street so I can quickly give out estimates of what it's going to be on replacement. And what I'm trying to do is slowly build an asset list for the town that's actually accurate.
Excellent, that's great, Ed.
Can we talk about?
Yes,
Okay. So recently at the transfer station, Ed went in and patched some spots that had severe deterioration. And we spoke a couple of weeks ago about looking at the paving that was approved by town meeting for the 50,000, or an engineering design and doing addressing drainage issues, and then putting down a much thicker full surface at the transfer station. The ticket price on that would be like 105,000.
including engineering.
When we got back, the engineering cost was around 10,000, which contained a few projects that they had recommended us do anyway. And then the construction piece, and when we added it all up today, it was about 105,000. So with available resources, the transfer station had 80,000 approved at town meeting. 50 of it was for paving. So that's a $55,000 gap. And Ed and I discussed where we could close that gap with some facilities money, with some other places. But you're still looking at it like
Money we don't have
35,000.
available.
Right, right.
Yep, to do something. Yep.
Right. So, I said I would get it back to you in 2 weeks with a number, and that's what it would take to do the project this way, as opposed to what was approved at town meeting.
So what's going to happen?
Well, Carol and I, we talked this afternoon briefly, and maybe you want to add some comments, Carol. Come up to the table. she had talked about it. Carol Rubenstein's the chair of the recycling committee. I think she's done some soul searching on the idea as well. So, you know, we're inclined not to spend $50,000 on something that contractors are telling us may not last the winter.
Well, that's my point of view now. Ed brought the town contractor, Lynch, to the transfer station to discuss the overlay, which we had approved at town meeting. And he said the overlay will not last. He said it'll look good on the first day, but it could start breaking up in a month, and certainly by the end of the first winter, it'll start breaking up. And I can't stand the thought of wasting $50,000 of the town's money. So David asked me this afternoon if it lasts 5 years, and I said, well, if it lasts 5 years, that would be a miracle. I'd be happy with that, but it doesn't sound like that's going to happen.
So I think if you went with the town meeting approved $50,000 project, which was just a quick overlay over the top, we would have to make sure that CM&D is maintaining that surface as much as possible to extend the life of it. And I don't know what kind of maintenance that would take.
It's a crapshoot given the base material. I mean, that's made up of different types of asphalt, cold patch, all sorts of dirt mixes through the years. Overlays are tricky. It's a crapshoot. I've done overlays over roadways that I thought certainly wouldn't last, and I've gotten 5 years out of them. I've also done overlays on roadways that I thought were going to work out great, and it turned into a horror show. This one here, given that you're just not putting it down on a good base, that's the one that's got me worried on it, and obviously all the contractors.
So just describe briefly what we've been doing the last 25 plus years on that surface. We've been patching, certainly in the last few years, we've been doing a lot of patching. It's been a rough surface for
Pretty much every
many
patch.
years that I can remember.
Yeah, pretty much every patch that we've done down there has popped out in one way, shape, or form. It used to be that CM&D crews would go out, and the way they used to do potholes would be just whatever the existing hole looked like, they'd dump it in there, roll it quick, and whatever hot top they had over at the end of the day, they'd take it down the transfer station, lay it out, and roll it.
Yeah.
So you just ended up with a compounding of mixtures. And the way we've been doing potholes to date is to actually grind them out, emulsify them, get a nice tack coat in there, roll them, grind them, and make a permanent repair that's going to last for quite some time. And we've had great success in that, as shown in the patches we've done along Washington Street. They just hold better. But the transfer station, we don't know. Again, we also don't know what do we have underneath that asphalt. Is it all organic? Is it moving? Is that the problem? Does it actually need to be dug out? But at the same time, we don't want to uncover a can of worms.
The surface that goes over the hump where you drive up and you throw the stuff into the containers, that was done about 7 years ago, was it? So that pavement is of a different age than anywhere else on the facility.
That whole area before you came in, I guess it must have been Gary. It might have been Paul Scott, but I think it was probably Gary brought in a lot of leftover material and smoothed out that whole hump. But it's all like alligatoring now.
Okay.
And the alligatoring is a sign of base issues.
So we have,
Also up on top there, we've got rodent issues that are underneath there too, so you don't know what's actually moving down through there.
so we have all these problems, but what I'm hearing is we're going to do nothing?
No, I think we're in agreement that we should look to come up with the rest of the funding to pay for a full project that's estimated to be about 105. But that would have to be, we don't want to wait till next spring, so we'd be looking at some sort of fall special town meeting to come up with those funds. If that is going to, if you don't think the people are going to take kindly to that, then maybe we just do what was approved at town meeting, but I don't think that's what we're recommending.
So we can't find the, go ahead, Paul.
Is there something between what town meeting voted and this complete project of 105, is there something in between there that would accomplish good things?
No.
And so what we approved was a 2-inch overlay of the existing surface in essence, right? And what we're saying is the existing surface is a whole patchwork of things done over the years. And you don't know what the subsurface is, which is critical to and you don't know what the subsurface is, which is critical to having a durable pavement last for a number of years. Plus, the drainage is not proper for a long life as well. So it's the subsurface 12 inches or whatever the number is of the right stuff versus the unknown stuff and the variety of patches that's on there now.
Yeah.
But there's also the regulatory issue.
Understood.
Which is that this is an old landfill, and that road is part of the cap of the landfill. And so we're required to keep that impervious, and it's believed that under the road is waste.
Right.
And therefore, it can't be ground up and made firm without extensive regulatory issues with DEP. And so I recall some engineers saying that we're best to leave it alone and not go there than to open up a whole host of
Pandora's box
regulations.
of,
But if a pothole opens up, doesn't it hit that level anyway? I mean, aren't we, one way or the other, we're gonna end up underneath that asphalt. If we don't do anything with it, we're gonna end up there. If we grind it up, we're gonna end up there. And if we just keep paving on top of it, we're gonna waste money.
The potholes probably go about 8 inches, and how much of a base would you need for a 2-inch?
what
Full road.
was the contractor recommending? 12 inches?
Foot?
You want to have a good 12 inches of a good gravel underneath your binder course.
And that's what's in the 105 grand you're talking
Yes.
about, including engineering.
What they would
right?
do is come in, grind out all the existing pavement, run a grader down through, grade everything off, level it off, add gravel as needed, compact it, do a 3-inch binder and a 1-inch top coat.
Yeah.
So the level it all off part is the part that Paul's pointing to as a problem, which I would agree with. That could be a concern if you scrape down to bare earth on a capped landfill.
But what came up today that I learned from David was that there's some understanding that the landfill that was capped is a different location than the transfer station. So now I have some more understanding to be gained in terms of what's where. And
Right.
there's some risk that maybe they didn't do what the state approved and what the engineers said way back when, but so that's new information that I didn't have, Paul, that versus operating under the keep the gremlins covered.
But we did have Norfolk Ram, which is a very impressive firm.
But they're the ones who
Do some-
raised this
Do
point.
some work out there, and
Yeah,
they did tell me to,
be careful, I understand.
well, more than be careful, that it was very much in the public interest and the community's interest to not get tangled up with a very large regulatory issue.
Disturbing
Because
things,
we would
yeah.
be looking at potentially millions of dollars of problems over a 50 grand or 100 grand road. It's just completely disproportionate.
Understood.
So
But I
there,
think the question that I have is, we're talking about what we don't know is under there, and yet what was designed and supposedly built says that there should be nothing under there.
Right,
Right?
and I mean, I'm thinking
Which is
that-
new to me today, is what I'm saying.
but I think they looked to see what was under there.
No.
I think they were,
We stopped,
Covering their
we said
bets.
we didn't want to know what was there, because once we knew what was there, we had to address it.
of course, our town council's back there saying, don't talk about this.
I mean, I spoke to Wayne Perry from Norfolk Ram, and Ed and I were trying to point the question to him, how deep can we go down there?
Yeah.
Is there enough of a base? And basically, he said he reviewed the regulatory status of the existing pavement at the town solid waste transfer station, And based on that review, it is my opinion that the existing pavement can be repaired without the need for a Mass DEP permit. So he went on to say basically that the cap on the landfill is something that would require DEP permitting, but the transfer station would not. And he still again cautioned about going, you don't know how deep you can go because it hasn't been looked at. So you'd be gambling on whether there's a 1 foot base there enough to support.
Whether you can go a foot to make the base.
Right,
Yeah.
by tearing up the existing pavement, grounding it up, and then bringing in a full base over it.
Right.
But
Can't we just put gravel on top and build up rather than digging down? Why do we need to dig down?
That's a good question.
We certainly can. Then we're gonna have, you're gonna end up with issues with the existing concrete pads, raising those. The building, I believe, is pretty much level with the ground now because they have a number of water issues in it. It'll be a little bit more work, but yeah, you can certainly go up.
So it sounds like we gotta dig deeper, but not literally, and come back with alternate solutions. I was waiting to do that one.
Deep, 60 feet to bedrock.
No, just to find out a little bit more, David, I think, in terms of what the solutions like Paul just described, how that might work.
well, I'm thinking that if you look at it now and think that it hasn't been done in 20 years, that I've seen roads before that have had refuse buried underneath, tree stumps,
Oh, nothing
that kind of
surfaced,
thing.
yeah,
There hasn't been anything surfaced there, to my knowledge.
right.
And for 20 years, it's held up pretty good. So whatever was down there, I feel was compacted enough, if there was something down
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
It was compacted enough and has been paved over enough that we should be able to stretch a 1 foot base out of there. 1 foot tops, we may only have to go down 6 inches or something, but, so that's where I am.
Okay. But the other part of the digging deeper is trying to find the money absent a fall town meeting, because otherwise we're doing nothing until we find the money.
Right, I think Carol's done a good job and spent a lot of time trying to get some prices down on fencing and the containers. That might generate some savings.
But if we deferred some of the items in that 80 beans that we approved for Carol, like we deferred the fencing for a year and came back in next spring town meeting and so forth.
I'd have to defer.
You know, and spend all the 80 grand on this problem.
We could defer the fencing, we could defer the
Containers.
containers for that matter.
The fencing, the fencing definitely looks like it needs to be repaired, and we could use facilities funding for that.
Well, and still be compliant with what was approved by the voters on that $80,000.
I'd have to go back and look at the actual.
That's something to.
I don't know if they
Legal counsel, we
approved.
won't ask her tonight.
I don't know if they approved a breakout or if they approved a dollar amount for
I
the transfer
think it was
station.
a
It was a dollar
total dollar amount. When I made my presentation,
It was.
I suggested, 3 categories, but I think it was a total dollar amount for
Yeah.
that article.
Yeah.
Right.
But even if we got to 80, how do we go from 80 to 105? Is it
Right.
25,000 somewhere else?
$10,000 for the engineer to look at a drainage solution in
But
there.
didn't we approve 15 grand for engineering that was halted and never spent on that?
On this project?
Yeah, when they started to look to bore and
Yes, I
decided
know, we
not to
stopped it.
bore.
Oh,
Yeah,
that
but-
was spent already.
That was
That
spent?
was last year, yes.
That's, well, we gotta find out for sure from town accountant.
What if we made a sidewalk through the transfer station?
Now you're
On one side,
talking.
Not the other side, we have $50,000 that we can spend on sidewalks.
Oldfield Drive.
You can't spend Chapter 90 money
Oh,
on
okay,
private
Nice
property.
try,
it was
though,
worth
yeah.
the try, anyway.
Has to be on a public way.
It's a 20 by 30 sidewalk.
But, yeah, so I think we need to know more about that 15. Maybe we did spend it, but
Didn't at one
I'm not
time
sure
we
we
had
did.
a,
That's what Norfolk Rim was doing, researching all those documents at DEP. I think it all got spent, but, you can.
Research and no solution, I like
Yeah.
it.
we used to have a warrant article a long time ago for paving. At some point, we didn't just use Chapter 90 funds. There actually was a warrant article. Is there any money in that warrant article?
Not that I'm aware of.
That was the bond issue, wasn't it,
Yeah.
about 15 or 20 years ago?
Yeah.
That's long.
It's all gone?
Well, but the point is to try and squeeze out, if it's possible to find some additional monies, and also maybe make the 105 a slightly smaller number by going 10 inches, or grinding out 6 inches and throwing 6 inches over, or something. You know, I don't know how that can make a roadway, but you know what I'm saying? To get the slightly less expensive, but still just as long-lasting solution.
Well, that's why I asked if there was anything
Yeah,
between
yeah,
50 and 100.
yeah. So,
They
That's-
said no.
The only variable would be the drainage, and I think the drainage is
I
important
think
over there,
that's very important.
because you're gonna be taking a surface over there that is semi-pervious, and it's now,
Yeah.
everything's gonna be runoff, and it's gonna go somewhere. And the way that area pitches, everything is gonna go towards the roadway and towards the swamp.
That's where you want water to go to the swamp.
No, not from a roadway. That's contrary to best practices. It carries bacteria, pollution, and
Petroleum.
chemicals. You need to intercept it, protect the wetland.
well, it sounds like the 50 grand solution is not a good solution. It sounds like we gotta figure a way to get the more permanent solution. We don't have all the answers to that.
The other thing we can do is just pave it, and then add the drainage the following year, voted that at town meeting, and add it as a secondary.
Ah, see, we're creative
Do you have to
here.
reopen the paving to add the drainage?
You would have to reopen the pavement.
Depending on what they come up with for a plan. They may end up recommending just basins at the base, and it'll be a small area.
So a two-part process that covers the gremlins if needed, and,
So you'd put curbs on it, and then you'd have some type of basin at the
Now,
bottom?
right now, there's enough berm around, and it's gonna direct all the flow towards the main gate. Yeah, I don't think we have any basins outside the main driveway there.
You don't have to have some kind of treatment for that stormwater before it goes in if it's from a transfer station?
It should go into at least a minimum of an oil separating basin
Yeah.
before it's discharged. And even over there, it's at such a low elevation, it's gonna be difficult to get that out of there.
It sounds like we need, this discussion isn't gonna come up with a solution. We need more thinking offline and come back with some specific alternatives. So I guess more use of Norfolk Ram and more use of your paving contractor, and see maybe putting the two of them together and come up with something that would,
Pave it with bricks.
that's doable. Something that's doable, yeah. All right, so we'll circle back at our next meeting with an update. That hopefully we can move the ball forward, because otherwise we're running out of weather window, I suppose.
but you have patched, again, like we've been doing. The whole point of going to town meeting was to say, those days are over, we're gonna,
Well, it sounds like they will be over. They're just not over yet.
but the potholes, we
Are
we have a
patched.
good cap right now.
Yes, that sounds like it, yeah. All right, Ed, this was a lot longer than the 20 minutes you were planning on, eh?
No.
Thank you, though.
Thanks very much.
Thanks, Carol.
Thank you, Carol. All right, so now we're gonna go, yes, George Shea, I'm sorry, George, you got a whistle or something.
I was going to suggest raising the road as Paul did, but I've got another suggestion. There was a time when I was involved with soil engineering, and I would suggest that you look into actually reinforcing the existing surface with like steel rods, and then paving over the steel rods. It was very effective during the Second World War for airplane runways. It seems to me if it could take a B-52, it could clearly take a car or two. So you might look into that as an alternative to raising it or lowering it.
Yeah.
Just put it in like this, stake it down like that on the outside of the road and pave over.
Thank you for the suggestion, George. Amazing what you actually know. All right, David, we'll go into your section here. Town administrator report, anything?
Well, I told you about the working on something for the appointments with a
Yes.
recommendation and a
Absolutely.
full presentation on that. I'm also looking at the use of travel expenses, mileage expenses, memberships, and professional development and all that stuff to bring something back. And we talked about something else that I was planning to talk about.
We might come
Well,
back to you.
Maple Street was something you.
Oh,
you-
right,
you had
right.
said you were gonna talk about.
Right.
But we don't need to talk about that now, probably.
Right. So that's all I had.
Great.
It looks like there are people here for the,
So we have a proclamation.
Yes.
so why don't we do that?
Why don't we do that?
You want,
Why don't you read it, Paul, because you're good at that.
I was gonna do the motion.
Okay, I'll read it, all right? So I'm gonna read a proclamation to have.
Michael's
Can I say,
clerk.
hear ye, hear ye?
He's the
at
clerk,
beginning?
he should be doing it.
Oh, I have to do this now? That's my only job, good.
That's
Well,
great.
first, to put it before us, I move that we issue a proclamation to honor,
Means I need my glasses.
Here it is, all right, I think I went up your agenda. It's Bess Rowell.
to honor the 100th birthday of Bess Rowell
I second that motion. All,
in the form of
a proclamation.
a proclamation that's gonna be read by,
So this is a proclamation of the town of Sherborn, whereas Bess Rowell has reached the age of 100 years, and whereas this symbolizes a special achievement in her life for her family and the town of Sherborn, and whereas Bess Rowell has demonstrated her ability to contribute to the citizenry of Sherborn and make a difference in our community, now therefore we, the selectmen of the town of Sherborn, on behalf of all its citizens, extend their warmest congratulations and best wishes on this occasion of her 100th birthday on August 16, 2013, in witness whereof we have caused the seal of this town to be affixed to this proclamation on this 8th day of August in the year 2013 by the Board of Selectmen, Peter Caruso, Chairman, Paul Ardurensis, Vice Chairman, Michael Jarmo, Clerk.
Excellent. All those in favor of this proclamation? Great. I'll sign it first.
So proclaimed.
So proclaim, that's huge.
Can I ask Ms. Sturgis a question?
Absolutely.
She's a Woodhaven resident, right?
That's correct, she's one of the original residents,
Okay. And
83.
there's a party next Friday?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a party.
It's COA
Council on Aging is
Council on
throwing
Aging
a
is
luncheon
having a luncheon in her honor
When is that?
next Friday.
Next Friday.
next Friday at noon.
Great. This is fun. This is the best part of the job, one of the best parts of the job up here.
that's quite an achievement.
It's huge. Congratulations, yes. it's huge. Okay, terrific. Nicely done. Consent agenda items?
No minutes, but we have the warrant, and you and I spoke earlier about
Yep.
several items. And
Yep.
then I found some other items I wanted to talk to you about as well.
Okay.
So,
But I'll take a motion to approve the
moved.
warrant as submitted, subject to clarity of some questions that are there.
so I won't turn the warrant in tomorrow.
Until you and I have talked and you get answers
They
to
can
some
get it
questions.
Monday.
Yeah, I would second that. Yeah,
Yeah.
all in favor?
Yeah, and I looked at that warrant too and had similar
You had some
questions as you did, Peter.
Yes, great.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're looking at it carefully. I
I'm
think
looking
you're
at the
bringing
stuff you
some
pull
other
out, yeah,
questions.
absolutely.
And you
No,
find
but
things
no,
that
but
I
there were
haven't found.
good questions in terms of
Yes.
document, so the public knows sort of what the issues are, documentation of reimbursement expenses and some things like that.
Purchases, expenses.
Right.
There's-
This warrant's for over $1 million.
Yeah.
Well,
And when you're spending public funds, you want to be sure it gets spent.
Well, the good thing is it's,
Carefully.
yeah, all of the items are approved by the various department heads. It goes through the town accountant, it goes through David, and then it goes through the three of us. And I know I generally look at everything, and Mike seems to be looking at everything, and Paul's looks at everything with a different perspectives that I think all bring the right questions to the party. So
there's a $653,000 assessment from the regional schools
That's
that's
the
in
big
there.
slug of it.
That's
Yeah.
why the bump.
All right, that's money well spent. All right, I guess we're on to talking to our town council. Barbara, if you could come up and take the microphone with us, and it's great to see you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Pleasure to be here.
Yes. So we're going to talk a little bit about your contract, I take it, and then we'll be talking about other things in executive session.
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay, great.
So, do you want me to go first? or-
Absolutely.
Okay.
Can I just ask David one thing first, Barbara? This copy we got with the edits, that's the operative document now, or are we still
That's what
negotiating that, or?
That's the last exchange of a document
Gotcha.
that we sent to town council for review.
And that's what you're gonna address today? Right?
I believe so, I don't.
Okay.
Yes.
I
Well,
assume
it just has some hand marked.
The edits that
Oh, yes,
David
yes.
gave
Okay.
you with
Yes.
our.
I just wanted to make sure we all started on the same page about it.
Yep,
That's all.
that's what she's responding to, yeah.
Great.
I actually, I understand you made some comments about the contract we had sent in. And I actually did go through and made all of the wording changes that you requested. And just to give you a little bit of history, I think the reason for some of those, the wording that was in there that you wanted taken out was, when we first were appointed, we were appointed in the middle of the year, right before town meeting. So we wanted to build in a little bit of protection, I guess, because there was a lot of.
She's referring to the 30-day notice
Right,
language.
there was a lot of transition work at the beginning that we didn't charge the town for, of course, because we don't charge for transition. So I think what happened was that just kept getting carried over each year and, never really looked at it. There were just no changes, we just changed the date every year and that was that. So we've gone through and we've made those changes as requested. So the only really remaining issue is the hourly rate. And I understand that the board had proposed, let me go back. First, we had proposed that there be an increase in the hourly rate, not the retainer, because last year the retainer was increased for fiscal year 2013 that just ended. And that's the first time we had an increase in the retainer. So obviously we weren't going to ask for another increase in the retainer. The hourly rates have never been increased since we've been with the town. So what we had suggested was for Attorney Chris Petrini and myself was a $10 per hour increase, and then for the other associates at the firm was $5, which would still keep the rates, I think, very reasonable. And I think the other thing to keep in mind is that when you talk about hourly rates, you really have to look at the whole package. At some firms, including my former firm, almost everything is done on an hourly basis. They don't use these fixed fee retainers. The package that we have proposed for Sherborn and have used for the past few years includes the bulk of the legal work, the so-called, core services, which is all the day-to-day work of the town under the fixed fee retainer. So that gives you a lot of cost control. So when we talk about the hourly rate, that's only for whatever essentially is outside the retainer. It's the litigation and so on. So when you look at the fact that, and this is almost universal, any town that gets a retainer almost always ends up winning, as in if the retainer is $50,000, the law firm ends up really spending 55 or 60 or some other amount. It's just the nature of the retainer. And the reason for that is that the law firm is willing to essentially waive some of those fees in return for getting that fixed fee every month. We know that every month we're going to get a check from Sherborn in a certain amount. So that brings down our effective hourly rate lower than what you're looking at, because we end up obviously with a lower rate on the retainer. So I really think that what we had requested was pretty modest in terms of what hourly rates are for attorneys, experienced municipal attorneys. But I understand, the board's concerns. We don't want me coming back here again next year saying, we want another $10 or whatever. So, what I've suggested is, and, unfortunately, you have a bylaw that says that you have to appoint town council every year, because what would really be easier would be to have a multi-year contract, and then we wouldn't have to worry about that, but we can't do that. So all I can tell you is that I can assure you I have no intention, nor does Attorney Petrini, of asking for any increase next year, retainer, hourly, or otherwise. This is, we understand that the town has, limited budgets. We work with towns all the time. We're just trying to sort of be a little more equitable in terms of what the going rates are. So I'm certainly willing to give you that here and open on camera that promise, that we're not going to come back looking for another increase next year.
And so we would have the retainer at $55,000 once again in 2014 and 2015 is what you're saying?
Yes, that's correct.
And that retainer, on average, for the prior years, the earlier years, it was $50,000 a year. But we've bested that in terms of getting more out of you than the cost of retainer, on average about $16,000. So that was one of the first questions I asked the town accountant was, are we winning or losing? And we certainly have been winning in that regard, so I appreciate that. So then you're asking for a difference of $5 an hour in the hourly rates from what we approved the last time we discussed this versus what you're asking. In your, you asked for a $10 increase on those two levels. We had approved a $5 increase.
That's correct.
And so you're looking to stand firm on the $10 increase. And
Right,
so
but
I just
again,
want to put the facts
yes.
out there. And the onus is on us to ensure that to the extent we're uncomfortable with paying the agreed upon hourly rates for tasks that are outside of the retainer, we have to manage that as best we can to ensure that we're not having you do legwork that we could be doing with our existing personnel and so forth. So that's just I think that's one of the ways we could always manage that better, or could at least try to manage it better. So I just put that fact out there. Personally, I don't have any problem with what you're asking, but the gents to my left and right who are more closely aligned to what you do for a living can speak to that, to the extent they wish. So,
I'd look to Paul
for
his comments.
Well, my concern was that this is on the high side for municipal practitioners. That there's a lot of lawyers out there who are good municipal lawyers who do things for a lot less. 150, 170, 175, 180, I mean, I see all these. And this would put us at 205, which is, I mean, like everything else in life, you can always find somebody who's more expensive and you can always find somebody less expensive. So I had thought a $5 increase was a show of good faith on our part, and my view would be, take each year as it comes. I think this is on the high side. So it's a little above the market. And I have to say, I think your services have been great for the town. You've been a good fit for the town.
Thank you.
Very much appreciate working with you. Always been very responsive and very helpful to not just the board, but all the different aspects of the town. It's got so many different moving parts. So from the overall point of view, I think everything is going well. But I think it's on the high side, so that's how we got to the point of offering the $5. That's more in line. That's like a 2.5% increase as opposed to a 5% increase or whatever. $10 on 200
$200 bucks, yeah.
is 5%. 2.5% increase seemed more reasonable. And I'm willing to look at it next year or the year after, depending on how things go. But I know municipal rates have pretty much been stagnant throughout the recession, haven't moved much.
Mike, any thoughts?
No, I don't. I mean, I think we get very good service from this firm, at least in my limited experience, and that includes experience on the Board of Appeals. And I've always found Barbara in particular to be very responsive on, any kind of questions somebody has, replying to emails, reporting back on things. I don't have any complaints at all about the service, and I'm not really looking to take a stand on a number if we can move forward with the same kind of great service. But again, Paul has the best perspective. He does municipal law. In my world, this would not be an outrageous request.
Okay. Yeah, and as I say, I'm comfortable with what you're asking, particularly where you're committing to a 2-year, sticking with it for 2 years, including the retainer. I think that's good information to know. I echo the service quality, quantity, and so I guess it's what you think to what Paul said here at this stage of the game, I guess the best way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think the response is twofold. First of all, there are, as Paul says, there are firms with a range of hourly rates in municipal law. Some are lower than this, and some are higher. But again, I think you have to look at more than just the hourly rate, because a lot of firms that have a lower hourly rate don't have a retainer. You know, and they also charge the same rate for everybody, including somebody right out of law school. So, you know, it's to some extent it's apples and oranges. I think, you know, if you look at the amount that we're charging outside the retainer, it's gone down each year. And, you know, hopefully we can continue to manage that as we go along. You know, I don't want to get too hung up on, you know, on a $5 difference, but I guess from our point of view, you know, we haven't had any increase, you know, since 2010. So you say it's 2.5%, but it's 2.5%, and my math is not that good, so I can't do those percentages as to what that would be on a yearly rate.
Over the 4 or 5 years there.
Yeah, so I don't think it's unreasonable, but as I say, we're certainly not going to, you know, what was that, the hill we're going to die on that they said in the NFL Players Association? Or one of those, the NHL or the NFL or somebody. I'm not going to use that analogy.
Well, I'm going to say you're the swing guy on this one then, because I'm happy for meeting their request. I appreciate what Paul's saying. We're spending other people's money, and so being prudent is as good a thing to do. But I think it's our management of it, not necessarily the rate, that I would push to ensure we don't spend people's money unwisely.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on that, Peter.
So I don't know if Paul's going to be very upset. I think his points, you've made your point well, Paul, but I don't want to quibble with Barbara. I like the idea of the 2-year commitment on these rates, including the retainer. I think we'll continue to get greater than what we pay for on the retainer, and we'll continue to be smarter about how we're spending the hourly rate service work. So, given that, I'll take a motion to approve the adjusted, the edited version of this, and you'll come back with a
clean
actual
copy.
Clean copy for us to sign outside of here. But I'll take a motion to approve this with the edits, as well as with the rates, the hourly rates that the Petrini firm has requested in this.
So moved.
And I'll take a second on that. I'll second it. And any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you, Paul. Appreciate that.
And I do appreciate
I
Paul's
respect that.
sentiment on trying to, you know, save a buck for the town. That's very understandable.
Well, I appreciate your sentiment, but I also want to repeat how well I think that you have been working with the town. And my hesitancy on the $5 has nothing to do with the quality and the fit that
Yes.
works well.
Thank you, Paul, and I've been doing this a long time, and as I said, I understand the towns are trying to save money any way they can, including legal fees, and so I completely understand. And I appreciate the kind words from the board, and I appreciate your approving the contract, and I'm hoping to be, next year, to just be able to send you another contract with no changes except the date, and
Great.
hope that you'll reappoint us again next year. And I
Perfect.
look forward to working with you again and trying to keep the cost down.
Excellent. All right, so that moves us on to the final item on here, which is going into executive session, not to return to open meeting.
So moved.
You have to say the
So
purpose
it's an
of the
executive session to discuss litigation regarding Sweet Meadow Farm and the cell tower issues.
Yeah.
So
Yes, and I think you also have to state that because an open session would have a detrimental effect on the town's litigation position, and the chair so declares it.
Okay, an open session would have a detrimental effect on the litigation and the town's position. And I think next time I'd like a
I'll
script
write it
to
down
follow, okay? So given that, it's a roll call vote. I think it's been moved and seconded. Roll call vote, Mr. Durensis?
Aye.
Mr. Jaimo?
Aye.
Mr. Caruso? Aye. So we're not returning. Thank you very much, folks.
gotta make sure they give the mics back, otherwise they're listening to it.